Hello everyone. So in this video, I wanted to talk about my experience of using Arch Linux for the past 8 months. Now last year, I switched to Arch Linux. It was of course an experiment. I didn't really plan to use Arch Linux for all my needs because I have been using Fedora for many years, I think close to 2 decades now. I think I first started using Fedora in 2005. Before that, I was using Linux when I was in college. I believe it was 1999 when I first got this exposure to Linux operating system, and of course, I have been using it since then. And for the past, roughly for the past 2 decades, 20 years, Linux has been my main primary operating system. I use it for, of course, my work. I use it for my media consumption. I spend most of my time, and I should say majority of my time, my working time and my time with computer on Linux. Although I do use Windows because I had to. Like I worked for one organization where, in fact, when you start working, or it was actually the case for me when I started working, the company I was working for, or most of the companies where I was working for, they were all using Windows. And apart from Windows, of course, I also have experience working on Mac because I had to once I had to develop an app, an iOS app, and that was the reason why I had to use Mac as well. It was, of course, for a very brief period, but I have had Mac uh, for watching movies, so I'm quite comfortable with all the operating system. I mean, I'm not really saying that I am a power user, but I'm quite comfortable. But talking about Linux, especially talking about Arch Linux, although I was using Fedora and I was very happy with that because Fedora, if you are used to it, you will know where to find things in that interface. So I was using KDE, by the way, and KDE is actually very easy to use. Although you have Linux, but when you install KDE, when you use KDE as your window manager, you can actually do a lot of things that you are doing in Windows. So in case you're a new Linux user and you're looking for something very simple and easy to use uh, Windows Manager, then try KDE. KDE is actually really good. It worked for me for a long time. But last year I thought I'll probably try and be a bit more adventurous. So I installed Arch Linux on my laptop, and I have been trying and playing with it since then. And I think I have now a setup which really works for me. But in the beginning, it was of course not the case. In the beginning, when you install Arch Linux, you have to configure each and everything yourself. You have to basically make things work. And of course, nowadays there are a lot of YouTubers, a lot of Linux based uh, content creators, and they are doing good job. They are basically promoting a lot of things and sharing what they have been doing. I of course watch their videos, and if you're following if you are doing something with Arch Linux, I'm sure you will encounter Luke Smith's video. He has been doing really great work, although I don't really agree with all the things that he has to say, but the work that he has been doing and he has done, sharing tutorials on shell scripts and suckless utilities, dmenu, st, and dwm. I do watch his videos on suckless apps, and I've learned quite a lot from him. In the beginning, when I was, of course, playing with Arch Linux, first of all, it took me a while to figure out how to install it. So I use this ThinkPad X220, and it is not at all easy to install Arch Linux on ThinkPad. The process is simple, but there's a trick that you have to do to make it work. To basically, I mean, you can install it, but you won't be able to boot it. So you have to do a few things, and I was able to install it. But when you install Arch Linux, you don't really get anything. You have to basically configure things yourself. You won't get any window manager. You won't get most of the utilities, and you have to basically install things that you really need. Now, if you watch Luke Smith's video, he will always talk about this. Uh, I think these shell scripts that he calls as labs. I think you can also probably search for it, LARBS, and I think the URL is labs.xyz, something like that. I think yeah, this one. So basically, these are some scripts. When you install Arch Linux for the very first time, you can actually use these scripts to configure everything that he has been doing. I mean, when you have Arch Linux in your laptop or on your machine, you have to configure it from the very scratch. You have to first install DWM or any window manager, then you have to do something else and something else and something else, and after like couple of days or couple of weeks or couple of months, in my case, you will end up with a setup that really works for you. But what he has done is that he has shared these scripts, and these scripts, I think if you open this labs.xyz, and if you try to look at the script, it is of course going to install a lot of things for you, and it will basically bring in things from his GitHub repository and all the configurations. So you will basically end up with a system that looks like his, and it really works nicely. I have tried it, but when I started playing with his setup, I thought, although it is great and I like it, but it is a bit like using KDE again, because you have all the things uh, pre-configured for you, and you have to basically go through this learning curve of understanding what he is doing, what he has been doing, like the way he has set up shortcuts and the way he configured things. And I basically uninstalled it. I thought maybe this is great. I really want to learn how to do it, and I want to spend time learning how to do it, so that I can basically make my own set of scripts or all the configuration files, and I'll basically do things that are absolutely needed for me, and I want to basically learn. I think learning was really important part that I was looking for. So what I have been doing, and I think I have been sharing it since the beginning. In case you don't know, I use org mode, and I use org mode along with, uh, I mean, not along with, what I'm saying is that I use org mode to also publish a blog. So, in case you don't know, org mode is great. You can use it for note, like keeping track of your notes and or maybe your to-do items. But you can also uh, publish a blog using it. And what I do, I of course make a lot of notes on my local computer, and whenever I have things that I really want to share with everyone, I do write about those things, and I publish them. So if you look at this particular blog, uh, here you can see all my notes. So these are not really, I'm not really saying that these are like the best blogs in the world. They are nothing but my rough notes. But the idea here is that I am trying to share these things with everyone. And what I have been doing as well, what I started doing on this particular blog, I have been writing and sharing my configurations and things that I have been doing on Arch Linux. So this particular blog post, which is actually not on ravi.pro, it is actually on linuxindia.com. Let me just open the actual link that you can probably follow. So this is the blog. Install Arch Linux on ThinkPad, and what I do whenever I have anything to add, or whenever I'm making a configuration, I basically of course keep a note of it, and I update this page. So in case, let us say you want to. So the idea here is not to give you a ready-made solution, like you install, you run the script, and you will have the setup exactly like mine. The idea here is to basically walk you through this journey of how you can learn not just Arch Linux, but Linux in general, but how to make things that really work for you. For example, if of course you want to, let us say, start by installing Arch Linux, you can do that. So once you install Arch Linux, you have to of course move on, and then of course start making changes. So the very first thing that you may want to do is you may want to install DWMS dmenu and st, and doing it is actually very simple. But I have a link to the uh, to the to the right documentation or whatever link I found online. So I think the best way to install Arch Linux, not Arch Linux, but DWM dmenu and st is to basically clone the repository and then compile it. There are some binaries that you can use. I think you can use Luke Smith's build, but I recommend that you do it yourself. And in the beginning, you will have nothing but something like this. I mean, they won't even be a wallpaper. You won't even see the status bar on top. So you have to actually make it work for you the way you are hoping to work it the way you are hoping to make it work for you. And once you install DWM, then of course you have to move on. The very first thing that you may want to do, as I mentioned, you have to maybe you want to set up a wallpaper, then maybe you want to create your xinit file. You may not even know what xinit file is. So basically, whenever you start your window manager, this file will be run and it will basically do things that you want it to do. Like maybe you want to set something in your status bar, maybe you want to set a wallpaper automatically, maybe you want to start Dropbox, and so on. So the idea here is to walk you through the journey and basically help you with the right packages that you need to install and know what those packages are all about. For example, if you want to play videos, you need to install MPV. If you want to learn the basics of DWM, I mean, DWM is huge. I mean, not really huge, but yeah, it is not huge, but the idea is to learn DWM. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can learn. I mean, there are plenty of things that you can learn if you try to go through the documentation. But I think for my use case, for my needs, I was looking for something. I was looking for all the like shortcuts, the default shortcuts at one place that I really need. I'm sure there are like many other things that you need to do. So let us say you want to kill DWM, you can do it with mod shift q. Mod key is the alt key by default. If you want to maybe change the, like for example, if you press alt shift enter, it will open st terminal, and now this is your primary window. Now if you press alt enter, now you're back to browser, and so on. And you can do like resize of the window, and you can close the window if you need to. So I've tried to basically share all the important shortcuts that I need, and that is it. What if you have multiple monitors? Maybe you want to switch between more monitors with keyboard shortcuts. You can. For audio, you may want to install ALSA utilities, and I talked about status bar. I also talked about configuring shortcuts, because you need to in case you want some of the scripts to be called automatically. If you're using ThinkPad, or if you're using a keyboard with multimedia keys, then you may want to make sure that those are bound to maybe MPC. Like I use MPC for I use basically MPD along with NCMP CPP, but I also use MPC, which is another command line based utility for controlling music, which in case you are trying to control your music, it really works better with MPC. And I've explained things that I do, like for example, I use Dropbox. And in case you want to attach multiple monitor, I didn't really talk about it earlier, but you can using Xrender and so on. So the idea here is to not give you one script that will, and like for example, I am also talking about what tools I really need to install. Like for example, I use Groovy, so I need to install Groovy. If you use Signal, you can install Signal. If you want to use ZSH, which I was trying to learn, I still haven't done it, but you can install it like this. I'll probably make one section install all the necessary applications, but the idea here is to also tell you about it. Like you may not know what Kdenlive is. Kdenlive is basically an application for video editing. I'm sure you know about Slack. You may not know what Ksnip is, and so on. And this is the actual file that I was trying to show you on. I mean, that was the blog, the public blog, but this is basically the place where I keep things with me. And I can of course have like one place where I can talk about, okay, install these 10 packages, but I also want to explain the purpose. For example, I do sometimes, not really a lot these days. So image editing, image manipulation. So I use of course GIMP. For vector graphics, I use Inkspace, and a few other applications like for notifications, Done.st. So the idea here is to keep your own notes and do things that are needed. And in case you want to maybe install labs, which is Luke Smith's scripts, it will give you a lot of things that will work maybe from day one or maybe from day two. But I prefer learning it myself, and I think that is what you should do. uh, when you watch, like for example, when you watch these YouTube videos on Linux, they will show one thing. So when you watch those videos, you may want to do it, or maybe you want to implement your own ideas. For example, yesterday I made a video on I generate my thumbnails using of course a shell script, which is of course using ffmpeg. But in my shell script I use colors. Now when I use colors, I have to make sure, like for example, if I show you this command, in this command I have these two colors which I keep on changing, but I don't really remember all the hexadecimal colors. And what I can do is I can use D menu, for example. Like if I do super C, it will bring up this D menu on top, D menu on top, and I can maybe select my Jira cloud color, or maybe script for Jira server color like this, and it will basically give me this option to now paste it, because it has now been copied to my clipboard. And this is of course, I took this, I got this idea from watching Luke Smith and a couple of other YouTubers videos, and I think it is really great. I don't think you can do these things, you can understand and learn these things when you have or everything configured. I think the idea here is to have your own workflow and only configure things that really work for you. Don't try to use someone else's scripts. I mean, take I think ideas from them, but don't try to use everything that they're doing, because we all work differently. We all have different ways of solving our problems. We may not all need all the packages that these guys are using. Don't really follow what I'm saying about applications that I use, because your application needs will be different. You might be you might not be using GIMP, you might not be using Kdenlive, maybe you prefer something else. But the idea here is that do something that you absolutely need. Don't really try to install like all the packages and utilities that are there available on the internet. Try to first do things yourself. If you're using Linux, the good thing is that there are plenty of things that you can actually do without installing any package at all. It could be a simple shell script, or it could be a simple utility that you can maybe create yourself, maybe over the weekend. The idea here is to do it yourself and have fun, enjoy working on Linux, learn a lot of things, and do share whatever you're doing, like I'm doing and other YouTubers are doing. I think it is really great. I don't really think Linux will anytime soon become the mainstream operating system for everyone, because it is not really easy to use. I mean, you can't really expect Linux, in fact, any distribution to work absolutely fine from day one. Although these days there are a lot of, I think there are a lot of Linux-based distributions like Pop OS, which, and I think Garuda OS. There are a couple of distributions that are claiming to be simple, easy to use, but I'm not really sure, to be honest. It is great. I think the idea here is to bring more people to use command line utilities if they can, because that is how you interact with computers. That is how people used to interact with computers back then. Don't be afraid of using terminal. Don't be afraid of writing shell scripts. Don't be afraid of breaking things. Do it yourself, and there is a lot of fun and plenty of learning. And that is the great thing I like about Arch Linux. it will force you to do things yourself, because as I mentioned earlier, when you install Arch Linux, you will not get uh, anything apart from just a terminal window, and you have to of course build your own system from scratch. And I have really enjoyed this journey over the past 8 months. I'm not really saying that it took me like 8 months uh, to do something useful. In fact, I think it was in December. Like I installed Arch Linux in November on one of the laptop, and of course I was playing with it. Like every day I would open my laptop and do something, like install some packages that I really need to. Like I'm sure you won't even get. I mean, forget about simple utilities like Emacs. You have to even install things like wget that won't be there on your Linux on your Arch Linux installation when you install uh, in the beginning. You have to basically install simple applications that will be missing, which is great because Arch Linux really works fast on this 10-year-old ThinkPad. I was of course earlier using Fedora, and it was not really. It was okay. I mean, although I'm using SSD, but still, when you install these distributions, you will get plenty of apps and applications that will make your life easy. But it might not give you the best experience, because there are a lot of services running. There are a lot of applications that you will never use at all. That is a good thing about Arch Linux. You will install things that are absolutely needed for your workflow. And yeah, that is all. That is all I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something new today. Bye bye.